Far out in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 92 million miles is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape-descended life forms are so amazingly primitive that two of them think doing a podcast called Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea is a pretty neat idea. They are Jeff and Bryan. Hi there, this is Jeff. I'm with my friend Bryan, and this is our St. Patrick's Day
bonus episode.
Hey Jeff, how are you?
Well, I'm doing great, Bryan. How are you?
Well, frankly, I can't stop thinking about plank time and inflation.
Plank time and inflation? Explain.
Well, have you ever heard of plank time?
I guess I have, but the definition of it has slipped my mind.
Okay, so, and I'm not talking about inflation as in the price of gas going up here. I'm talking about cosmological inflation.
Right.
And plank time. Plank time was invented for the express reason of understanding the concept of the Big Bang.
Okay.
Because things happened in the early universe so quickly, they had to come up with some kind of way of dividing time down to its smallest increment.
Oh, all right.
Planck time is basically defined as the smallest increment of time that they could come up with. And I'm not really 100% sure how the time was figured out, although I'm sure, brilliant cosmologists and theoretical physicists could tell us. But Planck time is basically 5.39 times 10 to the negative 44th seconds.
Okay. How many planks did it take to say that?
Oh, millions and billions. Billions of... So this basically divides time down into the billions and billions of a second, okay?
Right.
The smallest possible increment. And it's defined by the length of time that it takes a light to travel 1 Planck distance in a vacuum.
Oh.
But the point of that particular conversation is, if you think about the Big Bang, which is, in my estimation, important to this particular story. We're talking about Mostly Harmless, and we're talking about parallel universes, and we're talking about the universe and its construction. So That's what got me thinking about this. Okay. And the other part of that is, if you think about the Big Bang, what's the first thing that comes to mind to you when you think about the Big Bang?
The first thing that, what was before the Big Bang?
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. That's a brilliant observation and an answer that has never been discovered, okay?
And the second thing is Kaylee Cuoco.
Another brilliant observation.
Yes.
But the thing that I think about is it's kind of strange. They say that in our universe, one of the immutable laws of physics is that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light.
Correct.
And in saying that, there's an implied logic that says when the universe first began, it expanded from a single point, which we define as the Big Bang.
Right.
But what they really truly believe now is that in 1 Planck time of a second,
all right,
the entire universe expanded to the space that it currently fills.
Yow.
Exactly, yow. It's a concept that's almost undefinable in its imagination. And how these guys come up with this logic, it just blows the mind.
Right.
And in fact, not only did they say that the universe expanded during that one length of time. It expanded, and all of the universes that exist were created at that moment.
Okay. Wow. That's it, folks. Thanks.
We're done.
We're good. We're done. Chew on that for a while.
Yeah, well, and the only reason I'm laboring about this particular issue is because I think it's important to this story. I think that the idea of the existence of multiple universe and the idea of the universe as it currently exists is one of the fundamental questionable questions.
Okay.
Or answerable, or nearly impossibly answerable questions that you are about to ask me about Mostly Harmless.
Right.
So if you want, we can get started.
Sure. Let's get started.
Questionable answer 1.
The book starts out with talking about the difficulties of faster-than-light travel. It mentioned that before faster-than-light travel, because it took thousands of years to get there, faster-than-light travel was invented while the sublight speed group was going to their location, and the battle was over or settled when they did get there. So my question is, how do you start a battle with someone that's over 1,000 light years away? Before there's faster than light travel.
Well, that's a great question. And it's difficult to imagine an answer, of course. But the first fundamental answer I'll give you is that we do have a limitation as human beings. We can't imagine a lifetime beyond maybe 100, 150 years at the best.
Right.
So if we assume that there are life forms that have very long lifespans, perhaps then we can imagine them expanding out into their little part of the cosmos and intersecting with other beings from another part of the cosmos. And then therefore a war began where they would start sending out their sublight speed defenses and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But
right.
It's very impractical. In fact, one thing I did think was interesting when I read this question was, that basically your question is the scenario that's laid out in the book Ender's Game.
Okay, yes.
So that the people that Ender had to use to battle the alien bugs had been traveling for quite some time. They don't make it very clear how long they were traveling, but the people on those warships that he was directing had been traveling for years before he actually engages with them.
Right. Yes.
So it's interesting because that's the scenario of that book. One of my favorites, by the way.
And then while you were telling your answer, I was thinking about it myself, and it just dawned on me that the Golgofrinchians declared war on a neighboring continent before anybody even lived there. So,
there you go.
You don't need a reason.
Right. There was a war in absentia.
Yes.
Absolutely. Although I do have to say that I guess it's now that you bring this up because we were talking just a little while ago about the speed of light. All of these sci-fi books and all of these sci-fi stories tend to allow for something we have yet to believe is truly possible. And that is some kind of communication which can go faster than the speed of light.
Right.
And since light is information and information is communication, so far we have nothing even remotely considered that could travel faster than the speed of light, including communication. So you are right. It's a bizarre and kind of tropey scenario they're creating there.
There is this quantum entanglement principle about particles or electrons that are bonded and paired and react simultaneously no matter the distance from each other. So I think that is kind of the reason we have this notion that it would be possible to communicate instantaneously because these bonded particles or electrons do.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. I'm not sure that they have been able to produce that beyond a micromillimeter apart. But in concept, you're right that they would be able to have a paired, one on the ship and then one in the world in which you left. There's a Chinese book called The Three Body Problem, which addresses something similar to that. So
Right.
It's fascinating.
Questionable answers 2 through 5.
All the minds and memories of the Grebulon crew were stored in the mission module. When they were revived and their minds and memories were lost and could not be returned, they forgot almost everything. I have many questions about this group. The first of my many questions is, we are told we will never know for sure where the Grebulons came from or exactly what it is they wanted. We are told that they called themselves the Grebulons. Also, at the end of the book, Trillian says she knows who they are and what they are about to do. Did they discover this name on the ship somewhere, or did they just make it up and it's not really their name?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, this is another one of those sci-fi tropes. But again, here we're kind of limiting ourselves because of our human condition, again, in my opinion, because this answer sort of depends on our understanding of consciousness. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm thinking about the hypothalamus.
Oh, all right.
And if you think about the hypothalamus in the human brain is responsible for all the autonomic functions of the human brain. In other words, our breathing and all the other aspects of our body that we don't necessarily physically control.
Right.
So my imagining is that, again, we live in an infinite universe. So why couldn't we therefore then imagine that there are beings that have a larger hypothalamus, or if the hypothalamistic concept, if you will, when they're in suspended animation, they have this capacity to maintain these lower brain functions.
Right.
But outside of suspended animation, they have to have their brains refreshed, if you will, with all these aspects of their personality and the scientific knowledge that they own.
Okay. And I guess one of my issues with this beginning, we were told that we will never know where the Grebulons came from or exactly what it was they wanted, is that he tells us at the end.
Yes, he does. He not only tells us at the end, he tells us that Tricia knows.
Right.
And so it's funny. There's a couple of these questions in here where they seem contradictory. But again, it's because the Grebulons and Tricia, and for that matter, it seems Adams, has been affected by these reverse temporal engineering. They only remember after the fact.
All right, so I'm going to go on with my questions.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of answered a lot of them all in your first question, but we're going to go through the questions anyway because, by golly, I wrote them down.
Well, there's more aspects to some of these questions than just the one concept.
So when they stored and backed up their minds and memories,
Mm-hmm.
why would they delete the originals?
Again, I did answer this one, I believe, in that they didn't delete them. Well, maybe in a sense they did, but I'm assuming that in the case of the Grebulons, they have these lower brain functions in their hypothalamus, which allows them language and reading and other skills, but they don't have the capacity to retain a scientific knowledge and personality. I guess they did delete them in the fact that when they go into suspended animation, they lose those capacities.
Okay. So I guess that kind of answers the question of why were their minds not wiped totally clean, because they do seem to have language. They have an understanding of how to operate and navigate the damaged spaceship, and they know how to use all the monitoring equipment.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't know about their personal lives. So their hypothalamus lets them keep their job skills?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, as you get to the other parts of your question, I have further information. Actually, this is a good question because I'm not even sure what level of expectations we should have of the Grebulons after they get out of suspended animation. I think you're absolutely correct. It's kind of silly that we assume that they can do all these functions but can't remember who they are. But I kept thinking to myself, well, if I was on an automated spaceship that was flying with the kind of intelligence that was required and the kind of intelligence that they mention to maintain the ship while I was in suspended animation, I'm assuming that I don't have just one form of backed up information. In other words, I wake up and I've got a pamphlet that tells me how to open the closets, you know?
Right.
and there's pictographs and there's drawings or there's other things lying about the spaceship that tells me how I can interact with different parts of the ship.
Okay. Right. Owner's manual.
Yeah, exactly. Like a manual of some sort. And a physical manual is what I'm thinking, because obviously they've lost all their computer manuals.
Right. All the doors have a little wave your hand over the sensor to open it sign.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
So my last question is, they seem to have notions about what it is exactly that they have forgotten. They also mention that they know what they lost is hurtling through space. One of the Grebulons says, amongst the things we have forgotten, which we think are many and profound, is trigonometry. So they know there is trigonometry, but they have forgotten how to do it. How do they know what they don't know and why they don't know it? And don't you need trigonometry to navigate the ship?
Yes, you definitely need some forms of trigonometry. But here's my thought on that. It's not really clear when they started calling themselves Grebulons or when they realized that they knew that trigonometry existed. But here's what I do think. When they come out of the suspended animation and the ship reanimates everyone, the first thing the ship does is find a planet to land on and an object to monitor.
Correct.
Okay? And later we learn that the object is Earth and the planet is Rupert.
Right.
So I don't think they learned about trigonometry until after they started monitoring Earth. And in their monitoring of the Earth, they discover the sciences that the Earth had, including trigonometry.
Oh, that makes sense.
Navigational skills and various things that they didn't remember.
Right.
But of course, they wouldn't be able to get a deep understanding of those things because it's not typically the kind of things we put on TV.
Right. Right. No, it's not.
Could you imagine an entire world that was educated only purely on the television?
Well, I think we're almost looking at it.
Okay, yep, I guess you're right. To some extent we are, aren't we?
Questionable answer 6.
The book said, Tricia began to feel that the world was conspiring against her. She knew that this was a perfectly normal way to feel after an overnight flight going east, when you suddenly have a whole other mysteriously threatening day to deal with, for which you are not the least bit prepared. When I first read this, I thought it implied it was like getting an extra day you did not plan on. However, when traveling east, you lose time, or a day depending on how far you travel. So what is the mysteriously threatening day that is being referred to?
Well, here you have an advantage over me, sir. I have never done this kind of traveling before. So I don't have a real reference for what it is like to do that kind of traveling where you travel so many hours into the past, future.
Right.
The closest I could, well, I haven't even done anything in my adult life. I mean, I've been out to California a couple times, but that's a different way. When you travel west, you're right, it's a little different.
The way the time zones work is that as you travel east, like you're on the East Coast and I'm in the Midwest, you are an hour ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I travel east, there's the time I'm taking, plus I lose the hour going there. Right. When you go back, I gain an hour. So I leave at noon, drive for 12 hours, and I'm here at 11.
Right.
So it's backwards, and I don't know if there's a real thing in there that I'm missing or if it's just backwards.
I think it's backwards, but the only other thing I thought was perhaps what he means is that since she was traveling at night, she was sleeping and lost that time and then woke up to a new day.
That could be
a weak example, but that's the only thing I could think of. And
because she was taking the red eye.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's what he meant, but I think you're right. I think he did it backwards.
That saddens me.
I don't know. I don't know the answer. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of. And you're right. It doesn't make sense.
But I do understand his concept of falling asleep on a plane and waking up in the daytime. So it's everything went faster, but you didn't gain an extra thing.
Right.
It's just all of a sudden it's day.
Right.
So time goes faster when you're traveling east.
Right.
So the mysterious day just comes on you sooner than you expected rather than in the normal amount of time.
I think that's a really good explanation, Jeff.
I'm trying to figure it out. It was, like I said, that's why I put it in here.
I wish I had a better answer, but since I have no experience, I can't tell you.
Questionable answers 7 through 9.
All right, here's another multi-part question. Trisha thought that trying to live life according to any plan you actually work out is like trying to buy ingredients for a recipe from the supermarket. You get one of those trolleys which will simply not go in the direction you push it and end up just having to buy completely different stuff. Okay, she asked herself 2 questions that she did not have the answer to and hoped you could give her the answers. What do you do with the different stuff you bought? And what do you do with the recipe? A third question I have is, are you planning to keep in reserve the excuse of a wobbly shopping cart wheel to use when you get home from the store with a bunch of junk food? The cart made me do it.
Oh, see, now for a man, that would be a perfect question. And I have to ask you, Jeff, is this a rhetorical question?
Well, it's something I've got in my back pocket now. Where did all those chips come from?
Exactly. I swear it was the card. I couldn't do a thing about it. I know. This is obviously, at least from the perspective of the book, it's just a little bit of comic absurdity and oversimplification for comic effect.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's why I wanted to point it out here.
Yeah, I do. I love it. I think it's hysterical, but it's just a bunch of, what did they say? Badger spit?
Badger spit, yes, absolutely.
Questionable answers 10 through 11.
I have 2 questions about Ford being the new restaurant critic. The first one is, will he ever have to pull that stunt like he did at the old Pink Dog Bar? Now that he has the corporate credit card.
Yeah, there you go. Well, my answer is going to answer both your first and your second question. So if you want to ask your second question now, I'll answer them both.
Sure. The second one is, do you think he will go back to the restaurant at the end of the universe?
Well, the answer to this is that when he gets to the office, he's already in the field of the temporal reverse engineering. So he will never again, other than the domain of the king, go to another bar in his lifetime, or for that matter, the restaurant at the end of the universe, because his fate is sealed.
Yes. Well, I guess I should have rephrased these questions. The first one is, do you think he would have ever pulled the stunt like he did at the old Pink Bar? And do you think he would have gone back to the restaurant at the end of the universe? Both of which are impossible because he is dead.
Although, there are other dead people at the restaurant. So maybe
there are dead people, yes.
And the answer to that is yes, of course. He did it because he loved the danger of it.
Correct. That's right. Yes, he wouldn't give that up.
No, never again. Never again.
He would have the corporate credit card just in case the stunt didn't work.
Absolutely. He has.
Oh,
both
wait.
in his
I
back
do
pocket.
have one. Let's.
Questionable answer 12.
Arthur is continually asking everybody if they have heard of Stavromula Beta. If you knew you could not die until after you visited a particular place, would you be seeking it out?
Very good question. And here's my answer. When he is asking about it, my assumption is he's asking about it so that he can figure out a way to avoid going there.
That would make sense. You have to know where it is before you can intentionally not go there.
Exactly. Although I do want to point out, we make one assumption about Stavromula Beta that isn't really made by Agrajag, and that is Arthur's last life. We know it's one of Agrajag's last lives, but we don't know for a fact that Arthur's last life, or the end of his life, immediately precedes his stepping onto Stavromula Beta.
No, that's absolutely correct. And I guess one of my, I don't want to call it disappointment, I'll call it this sad surprises, is that we just knew that he killed Agrajag there, and he was safe anytime up until that point.
Right.
But that was not his end.
Right.
That was the end of Agrajag's lives. So
right.
I was extremely disappointed at how quickly Arthur's end came after seeing that matchbook and having Agrajag go down by random.
I agree 100%.
Questionable answer 13.
In the book, they mention that we as human beings have no comprehension of what a computer terminal is. And if a computer terminal is not some clunky old television with a typewriter in front of it, but is instead an interface where the mind and body can connect with the universe and moves bits of it about, why did Deep Thought, the second greatest computer in the universe of time and space, seem to have a terminal that we would recognize as a computer terminal?
I love it. And to me, it's a simple answer. Let's see now. At this point, Deep Thought is actually 17.5 million years old.
Okay.
So even if he is, and he is, as he's defined himself, the second smartest computer that ever existed, his technology is over 17.5 million years old. Okay,
so he's an awesome computer, but he's stuck in a clunky old box.
Right. The technology, the interfaces have improved over time. Even though the Hitchhiker's computer systems are by far less superior and less sophisticated than Deep Thought, the interface has been improved by that 17.5 million years of technology. So
that makes a lot of sense. I understand that.
We love it, right? Because that's what we're looking at VR, and we can't even imagine where it's going from there, right?
Yeah, right.
Questionable answer 14.
When Ford was hacking into the computer at the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy offices in order to have all of his expenses automatically approved, he gained access to the computer, and a small flock of mean and steely-eyed creatures with pointy little heads, pencil mustaches, and querulous demands as to his authorization came swooping through virtual space toward him. He produced an ID card that they scanned. How do you produce a real ID card in a virtual computer universe?
Oh, you're going to hate me.
No,
it's
I've
easy.
I got an easy answer in my head, so we'll just see if it's the same one.
He reached into his pocket and he pulled it out. I mean, presumably the car.
Wait, hold on, stop.
Yeah, I know. But remember, he's in a physical space. He's also in a virtual space. And presumably, if you have this kind of an ID card, it's designed for this kind of activity. So if he reaches into his pocket, it's got some kind of, for lack of a better term, Bluetooth connectivity.
Okay.
So he reaches in his pocket, he pulls out the card.
All right. So what he's seeing, or there could even be a physical scanner scanning his real card when he pulled it out, and he's just seeing the pointy-headed, pencil-mustached,
querulous beings.
Querulous beings, yes.
I love the description, though. I just imagine to myself that Adams is walking up to the editor's desk and asking for a check.
Right.
And he's literally describing the guy that has to write the check to him.
Yes.
A pointy head, little pencil neck.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Questionable answer 15.
On the planet Hawalius, many of the oracles were closing shop because the news broadcasts were broadcasting the future. One of the reporters was Trillian. It was never explained why or how that was possible. So I'm asking you.
Gee, thanks, Jeff. And frankly, when I read this question, I was a little confused as to what answer I was supposed to be giving you. I mean, obviously, if she's traveling in a ship that can travel in space and time, like the Heart of Gold or the Beastromat, she's able to travel in time back and forth and in space back, through different areas and gather the quote unquote news from the future and news from the past. But I'm not sure that that's the question you're really asking.
In a way, it kind of is. The question, I guess they do a little bit of time travel with the Beastromath, does a lot of time travel. Mm-hmm. The Heart of Gold typically does not time travel, but in the radio series, it is how they got out of prehistoric Earth.
Right.
Rather than the Chesterfield sofa. But because they did the Chesterfield sofa,
mm-hmm.
to me, in the books, the Heart of Gold does not time travel.
Yeah, you're right. If we stick to the storyline that's within the books, the Beastromath is the only vehicle we know of that travels in time.
Right, and it seems to be a unique type of a ship. So I guess...
It does, but as we defined when we talked about the Beastromath, it was the beginning of a new technology. So again, time has passed while Arthur is on planet.
And Slarty Bartfast was going on and on about the campaign for real time and everybody mucking about in time. So time travel is definitely prevalent and going on. It just seems odd that they're broadcasting the next month's election results. And you would think that would be the thing the campaign for real time would be jumping all over and trying to stop.
Right. And how would you prevent everybody becoming fabulously wealthy, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, because if you could take physical things home with you, you could just, like the slogan about Milliways, where you could deposit a penny in your time, and at the end of the universe, compound interest pays the exorbitant price of your meal. With time travel, you could put money in the bank, go forward in time, withdraw it, go back in time, deposit it, and just do that a few times. And, there can't be lottery anymore.
Right.
So,
well, the only thing we can assume is that when the Beastromath and Slarty started worrying about the time travel paradoxes that are being created and the issues there, that the prevalence of time travel ships probably started expanding exponentially. And that's why the issue became an issue and why Tricia was able to go back and forth in time and travel that way.
All right. Well, to throw a wrench in the works then with adding to this question.
Please.
It would be, since time travel has been mucking about for so long, why is it only now that the planet Hawalius has to close up all their shops? How come they didn't go out of business?
Hope is the last thing to go.
Yes.
Nobody could afford a beach house?
That's right. Yes.
Sorry, that's your next question.
Yeah, that's a good segue to this question.
Questionable answer 16.
So the old man on the pole told Arthur to buy a beach house. The one the old man bought was first offered to the smelly old woman in the cave, who turned it down. The smelly old woman told Arthur to do the opposite of what she did. Would things have turned out differently if Arthur bought a beach house? He'd have never gone to Stavro Beta.
No. I think the answer has to be yes. But of course, the book would be a lot less exciting.
Right.
Because it would be, and Arthur bought a beach house. And by the way, he was gone that weekend and died when the earth exploded.
Right.
Short story.
Yes. No, but see, he would have had to go there to have Agrajag. See, he could have saved the world by buying a beach house.
Yes.
Questionable answers 17 through 18.
I have 2 questions about the planet Arthur crashed on where he became the sandwich maker. That's La Muela, I believe is the name of that planet. The first is, after Arthur crashed, when he was laying there hurt and broken and bleeding, Adams wrote in his book, he knew with a kind of resigned certainty that he would survive the crash because he had not yet been to Stavramula Beta. Why did Arthur not wonder if that planet was Stavramula Beta, since that would be the type of thing that typically happens to him?
I love it. Yeah, well, he could have been on Stavron Milibita, but remember, he also knows that it's in an attempt to have him killed that Agrajag gets killed. In other words, someone's going to try and kill Arthur once he gets there. So even if he landed and he knew he had landed and he crashed, he'd still have to live on that planet long enough for someone to want to kill him.
Right, yes. So he knew he would survive that crash, only possibly to be killed later.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So that planet was said to be uncharted. However, Trillian was able to track him down fairly easily and said that the authorities knew what happened and where he was the whole time. Also, Ford was able to mail a package to him. Is this some strange usage of the word uncharted I was previously unaware of?
Yes, of course. Oh, gosh. Well, and the simple answer to this is the act of the ship crashing on the planet caused it to become charted.
Okay, well, there we go.
Everything that's known about the planet was known as soon as the ship crashed, and therefore they would know the address and place where, well, at least the authorities, and if Trillian was as good a detective, or I shouldn't say detective, reporter as she claimed to be, then she'd be able to figure out where he was and what his address was. Now, Ford is another question, and a good one, by the way, but it didn't really matter what Ford wrote as an address for Arthur, because he was already, again, in the temporal reverse engineering part of his life plan. Therefore, Colin, the robot, was going to guarantee that Arthur got the book just as was planned.
So as for the Uncharted, it's like we did not know that that island existed until the cruise ship ran aground.
Yes, exactly.
And now we do.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. And it's a great place to get margaritas, by the way.
That's right.
Questionable answer 19.
This next question is going to be about the filters, which we talked a lot about during the episode, but I'm going to still keep this question in here because it's a fascinating concept and there's lots and lots to explore.
Mm-hmm.
The guy told Random, your universe is vast to you, vast in time, vast in space. That's because of the filters through which you perceive it. But I was built with no filters at all, which means I perceive the whole sort of general mishmash, which contains all possible universes, but which has, itself, no size at all. Filters block what comes through. So, how does the perception of the universe get smaller when the filters are removed? During our conversation, we came to the conclusion that filters isn't really the correct word for what he's saying to make me understand it.
Right.
And that is limitation.
Right.
And a filter to me is a limiter, not a limitation. But he seems to be talking about limitations. So I'm really curious about how everything gets smaller when you see all of it.
Right, right. And man, this is such a good question. And I know we talked a lot about it in the podcast earlier, but here's a new answer.
Okay.
That just completely sort of blows my mind. Okay.
Oh, all right.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Here's the answer.
Blow me.
Yep. You're so bad. All right, here we go. You ready?
Yeah, sure.
13.7 billion years.
Okay.
13.7 billion years is the extent of our observable universe.
Right.
When we put our greatest telescopes out into space and we look out to the edges of what we can see, that's how far out we can see, because we believe that that's the beginning of the universe.
Right.
Okay. And we know that the universe is expanding. And the fascinating thing, to talk about things that blow your mind, right? So I was watching a graphic from NASA the other day, and they were actually showing the solar system spinning and the motion of our solar system in relation to the motion of the universe and the motion of our galaxy. So they were actually showing this sort of, it's hard to describe it, kind of a corkscrew spinning animation, which showed our solar system moving through space. Right. And eventually, as you know, all of the galaxies continue to expand away from each other, eventually they're going to be so far apart that we will not see anything in our skies. And it's going to take billions of years for that all to happen. But if you went 13.7 billion light years away from where we are today, if you were able to go there and look, you would see 13.7 billion years in every direction from there.
Yes. Yes. Right.
So the vastness of the universe is so unimaginable. But here's the part that actually blows my mind. When they talk about the universe and what we started with the conversation, we kind of imagine this Big Bang as being a tiny little golf ball that expands out in every direction. And that the universes and the galaxies are all expanding from one single point. Right. And they're getting bigger in a global sort of shape. But the theoretical physicists say that the universe is actually flat.
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 You're a flat universer?
Not just me. All those crazy people out there that are a hell of a lot smarter than me understand.
Define flat. If flat simply means thinner than it is wide, then okay, but
if they're saying, what they say is, if the universe were observable from outside the universe, it would look like a sheet of paper.
It would look like a galaxy or like a solar system.
Yep. A flat sheet of lumpy paper.
Okay.
I mean, but the thing of it is, they also say there is no outside of the universe.
Right.
So it has that same answer. It's like, how can there be a flat universe and there be infinite space within it?
Yes. Yes.
Feel free to gibber.
Right. One of my favorite ways of describing the universe and the I'll say the theory of relativity, because everything happens from your point of view. So When
Yes.
we're looking at things, we have to actually imagine we're the ones moving, not everything else moving, because we're stationary to us.
Right.
And everything's moving away from us, except if we go over there, and then everything's moving away. So it was take a partially blown up balloon and cover it with dots. Just dots all over it in a grid pattern.
Right.
As you blow up the balloon, every dot is moving away from every other dot. And the farther the dot is away from the dot you're on, the faster it is moving away from you. And so that's how the universe expanding is explained, of why things are moving faster farther away than close.
Right.
And I thought that was a easy, simple way of imagining the universe and how everything moves away from each other.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. It's a fascinating story.
Questionable answer 20.
So here is another case of a definitive statement that is proven false. The book said this about the perfectly normal beasts. No one knew where they came from. No one knew where they went. Arthur asks old Thrashbarg that question when he and Ford are about to ride off the planet on one. Old Thrashbarg told them the domain of the king is where they were going to go. So how did old Thrashbarg know? I'm guessing it's because he's always referring to the almighty Bob. And who is Bob?
Oh, I love this question. It's really kind of fascinating. I would defend Adams in that his answer is not what I would call definitively false. Okay. And let me explain. The first thing that we want to understand is that the beasts go in one direction in the spring, we'll say, and the other direction in the fall. Okay.
Right.
So we really only know of one place in one direction for the beasts.
Right.
So if they're going towards, let's say, the spring and they end up in the domain of the king, we'll say that's to the left. But if we don't really know where they came from on the right.
No, we don't.
Okay. And on top of that, we don't even know if they stay in the domain of the king and whether they came from the domain of the king or whether they continue on to another place where they originally came from. So we don't know where the beasts came from. We know where at one point where they go to, but we don't know really where they came from.
No,
Okay.
no, because nobody wrote it in that direction yet.
Yeah, exactly. And so the answer to that is the funny part, I think, is kind of funny. Can you imagine, how does Thrashbog know where he came from? Well, here's my first thought. So the beasts are galloping the other direction, we'll say to the right now in the fall.
Okay.
And on the horns of the beast, they get a concert flyer.
Oh!
Okay. Or maybe Bob wrote him in and said, oh, by the way, I just came from the domain of the king.
Right.
Because we know that's the name of the bar, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Questionable answer 21.
The king in the domain of the king is obviously Elvis Presley. Just Elvis is said 4 times, and Elvis Presley is said twice in the book. Why do you think Adams never had Ford tell Arthur who it was, since Arthur seemed not to know?
Oh, yeah, I love it. And you know the answer to this one. Adams just wanted to make Arthur appear as clueless as he could possibly make him.
Yes. And he did a good job of that.
Yes, exactly.
Questionable answer 22.
Since the recalculations of the Grebulon leader's horoscope showed absolutely clearly and unambiguously that he was going to have a very bad month indeed, and said that he needed to take positive actions, make tough decisions, and see what needed to be done and do it. is Trisha to be blamed for the destruction of Earth because of her half-hearted attempts to do these recalculations, making them inaccurate?
Well, I'm going to defend Trisha here. I don't believe that her recalculation of the trajectories, etc., that she did were inaccurate. In fact, in my opinion, Trisha's recalculations produced accurate results. But if you think about it, she would have had no reason to read or look at or even understand what the Grebulon leader's horoscope said. Mm-hmm. She just did the triangulations and the trigonometry to show the differences in the orbital relationships from Earth to Rupert. So she could have done a completely accurate result, but still been responsible for the destruction of Earth.
Yes.
Because of what the Grebulon leader believed himself to be. He didn't know what his actual birthday was. He had just chosen one of those horoscopes.
That's true. Yep.
As the type of individual he thought he might be. Okay.
Right.
So she never got a chance to read the horoscope, nor would she have even known what the results would have been had she.
Right.
Questionable answer 23.
I have one last question about the guide mark 2, which is, why do you think it is shaped like a bird?
It's an excellent question, but I think I sort of have a reasonable answer, if you will. Okay. The thing that makes the Mark II unique is its multiphasic, multi-universe concept.
Okay.
And therefore, when I think of that, I think, well, what's an analogy that would come closest to that? And that would be some kind of fluttering or flapping, because it would be fluttering or flapping in and out of reality or in and out of your perceived universe. So when I think about that, I think, well, it makes sense that there would be something flapping or flipping or, flying around. So perhaps that's where the bird shape or bird concept sort of comes from. It's fluttering in and out of reality.
Okay. I have an answer.
Good.
And here's my answer.
Birds are funny. No.
This was, yeah, that's true. Not as funny as squirrels.
Oh, there you go. You're right.
This, remember, is written by human beings.
Yes.
If you ask anybody and you say, think of origami,
right,
they're going to think of a crane.
Right. You're right.
And he describes the thing as unfolding like origami.
Yes, he does.
And
yep.
And if you say origami, the image that's going to go into, I'm going to say, the vast majority of people in this world is going to be the paper crane.
Right. Right. Or the squirrel.
Or the squirrel. Yes.
No, I agree. The origami and the crane is a perfect analogy.
So I'm just thinking that's when he said origami, he thought of a crane. And he made it shaped like a bird.
Yep. You got it. Perfect. Perfect answer. Okay, Jeff, I probably should have prepared you for a question, but maybe we can just have an extemporaneous conversation about this last aspect of the book.
Okay.
And it starts off with our original conversation about the creation of the multiverse and the Big Bang and inflation.
Okay.
And every time I think about that, and I think about the Mark II's goal of eliminating all possible Earths within the universe extent, I think to myself, well, one of the laws, if you will, for our universe is that nature abhors a vacuum.
Yes.
And I just keep thinking to myself, if you were able to collapse all of those planets that were Earth-ish in nature and all of them at once, don't you think it would have caused some kind of catastrophic event, like another Big Bang to start off again?
Well, yes. Well, you could think of it like lightning and thunder. So thunder is air masses clapping together after the lightning burns away the atmosphere.
Right.
So, yes, nature abhors a vacuum. The lightning burns it away. It closes right back in immediately, creates thunder. So, yes, if somebody totally destroyed and removed a string of planet-sized sausages, then something would happen. Something would definitely happen. And I don't know if it would be a big bang, but yes, I don't, well, let's see. What could possibly happen? Have you come up with any ideas?
I haven't been able to. I just think, like you say, there would be some kind of catastrophic event that would happen at the collapsing of those spaces, you know?
Right. Well, just if you are in the water while your ship is sinking, as the ship goes down, it pulls lots of things from the surface down with it.
Right.
So the last place you would want to be is kind of in an orbit around a planet that it was just about to be wiped out of existence in every parallel timeline universe.
Right. Yep. So I do think that that's a very catastrophic ending to this entire story. It just beyond comprehension what would occur. Definitely cataclysmic, I would say.
Definitely cataclysmic. Yes. Without a doubt.
Hey, Jeff, are you ready to say goodnight?
I think I am, Brian, because I've got to get out of here. I've got an Elvis concert to get to.
Hey, you
Don't
know
be
what?
cruel.
I was just in Florida and like Elvis canceled because he had COVID.
Oh, really? Oh, what a
Yes.
shame. You can't make that stuff up.
No, it's true.
Thank you for listening to Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea. Look for us the first Thursday of every month for a full episode. We will also release a bonus episode later in the month. A very special thanks goes out to Luke, Max, Greg, and Tim Lesnick for arranging and performing our opening theme. We would also like to thank our talented friends and family for their voice work on our introductions and commercials. A very special thank you goes out this episode to Kelly Lesnick for counting up our questions. Visit our website at digitalwatchesareaprettyneatidea.buzzsprout.com, where you can find links to all my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy inspired t-shirt designs. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube as Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea, on Instagram as Watches Idea Podcast, and on Twitter at Watches Idea. If you'd like to contact us, our email is digitalwatchespodcast@gmail.com.
This has been a Froods for Thought production.